For nearly 5 decades, Benny Andersson stood as one of pop music's greatest architects. Yet behind the dazzling costumes, the chart-dominating anthems, and the sold-out stadium tours lay a deeply personal story, one shaped by love, loss, and the relentless toll of fame. At 78, Andersson has finally allowed the world to glimpse the man beneath the legend, his journey from a Stockholm boy with an accordion to the creative force behind the most successful pop phenomenon of the 20th century. This is the untold narrative of triumph and heartbreak that defined not just his life, but an entire era of music. Benny Andersson entered the world on December 16, 1946, in Stockholm's Vasan district, born into a family where music flowed through the veins as naturally as blood itself. His father, Gösta Andersson, built structures as a civil engineer, while his mother, Leila, provided the warmth of home. A younger sister, Eva-Lise, arrived in 1948, completing the family circle. But it was Benny's paternal lineage that truly shaped his destiny. Both his father and grandfather, Ephraim, were accomplished accordionists who understood music not merely as entertainment, but as a language of the soul. When Benny turned 6 years old, his parents presented him with his first accordion, introducing him simultaneously to Swedish folk melodies, classical traditions, and the distinct European style known as Schlager music. The boy absorbed it all with an almost supernatural hunger. His early record collection told the story of an omnivorous musical appetite. Caterina Valente's sophisticated recordings shared space with Elvis Presley's rebellious energy, particularly the song, "Treat Me Nice," which captivated young Benny precisely because of its piano accompaniment, a detail that foreshadowed his eventual mastery of keyboard instruments. By age 10, Benny had acquired a piano and taught himself to play, drawing inspiration from contemporary musicians like Brian Jones. Formal education held little appeal for a child whose true classroom was the concert hall and recording studio. At 15, he abandoned school entirely and threw himself into performing at youth clubs throughout Stockholm, where he met his first serious girlfriend, Christina Granville. Together, they would have 2 children, Peter, born in 1963, and Helen, arriving 2 years later. In early 1964, Benny and Christina joined a group called Elverat Spellman, a name whose playful reference to an electrical utility company and folk musicians reflected the group's humorous self-awareness. They performed primarily instrumental arrangements, including covers like "Baby Elephant Walk," but Benny's hands itched to create. This period marked the emergence of him as a songwriter, a role that would eventually eclipse his function as mere accompaniment. That October, Benny's trajectory shifted decisively when he joined the Hepstars as their keyboardist. The band was ambitious, hungry, and perfectly positioned to ride the wave of 1960s Swedish pop. By March 1965, barely 5 months into his tenure, the Hepstars achieved their breakthrough with Cadillac, catapulting them into the upper echelon of Scandinavian pop acts. Benny transcended his original role with remarkable speed. He became not just a musician but the creative nucleus around which the band orbited, their principal songwriter, their emotional anchor, and undoubtedly their most marketable commodity to teenage audiences across Sweden. The hits flowed from his pen with increasing regularity: "No Response," "Sunny Girl," "Wedding," "Consolation," "It's Nice to Be Back," and "She Will Love You." Each song bore his unmistakable fingerprints, sophisticated chord progressions, memorable melodic hooks, and an emotional directness that resonated across Scandinavia. Yet the most consequential meeting of Benny's life occurred in June 1966 when he encountered Björn Ulvaeus. The two discovered an almost preternatural creative synergy, beginning their songwriting partnership immediately. Their debut collaborative composition, "Isn't It Easy to Say," would eventually be recorded by the Hepstars, but more importantly, it signaled the beginning of a creative partnership that would reshape popular music itself. Benny also collaborated with Lars Berghagen during this period, and their joint effort, Hedgehogman, achieved a respectable second-place finish in the 1969 Melodifestivalen, Sweden's Eurovision Song Contest gateway. But that same festival brought something far more consequential. Benny encountered Anni-Frid Lyngstad, a captivating singer whose voice possessed an almost hypnotic quality. A profound connection formed between them, one that transcended professional collaboration. Simultaneously, Björn was developing an equally significant relationship with Agnetha Faltskog, a talented vocalist whose career was gaining momentum. These personal connections created an inevitable gravitation toward artistic partnership. By 1969, Benny and Björn had composed "Love Sextet" for Britta Borg and "Spellman" for the Hepstars, establishing themselves as a formidable songwriting duo. Meanwhile, they began producing Anni-Frid's work, including her 1969 single, "Peter Pan," and her 1971 debut album, "Frida," while Agnetha pursued her own theatrical projects, notably performing in the Swedish production of Jesus Christ Superstar in 1972. The four moved in orbits that increasingly converged. They supported one another's endeavors, provided vocal accompaniment on each other's recordings, and developed the kind of intimate creative rapport that typically takes years to cultivate. By the early 70s, something unprecedented was gestating, though none of them fully understood its magnitude. Their initial performance together occurred in April 1970 during a recreational trip to Cyprus. What began as informal singing on a beach spontaneously transformed into an impromptu concert for United Nations peacekeeping troops stationed on the island. It was a moment of pure creative synchronicity, four musicians harmonizing in the Mediterranean sun, utterly unaware they were previewing what would eventually alter popular music forever. Around this same period, Benny and Bjorn were recording their debut collaborative album, Lycka, with Annifrid and Agnetha contributing vocal layers. Later that year, they christened their budding stage venture, Fest, debuting it on November 1, 1970, in Gothenburg. The reviews were decidedly mixed, with critics offering largely dismissive assessments. Yet one performance broke through the indifference. Their rendition of Hedge Gamla Man, Hello, Old Man, generated such enthusiasm that it ascended to number 5 on the sales charts and sustained itself at the summit of Svensktoppen, Sweden's radio chart, for an astonishing 15 weeks. Throughout 1971, the four musicians formalized their partnership, integrating their voices more prominently into every new composition and embarking on touring commitments across Scandinavia. They released additional singles including Dove Kan Ingendorder and Tank Om Jordan Vor Ung, with Agnetha and Annifrid's vocals increasingly central to each arrangement. By summer 1971, Bjorn and Agnetha had married, and the newlyweds began regular performance appearances alongside Benny across Swedish folk parks and provincial venues. Stig Andersson, the visionary president of Polar Music, possessed an almost prophetic conviction that Benny and Bjorn possessed the essential ingredients for global superstardom. He consistently encouraged them to refine their craft, and after several near misses, their perseverance paid dividends. Their 1972 Melodifestivalen entry, Sag det med en sang, Say It With a Song, achieved third place and became a domestic hit. Japan's music market subsequently demonstrated unexpected enthusiasm for She's My Kind of Girl, which penetrated the top 10 across the archipelago in 1972, an extraordinary validation from an unlikely geography. The authentic spark, however, materialized in June 1972 with People Need Love. This composition featured Agnetha and Annifrid with unprecedented prominence, credited to Bjorn and Benny, Agnetha and Annifrid. Though it merely reached number 17 domestically, its penetration of the American charts marked the inaugural step in a journey toward global dominion. By 1973, the quartet entered Melodifestivalen once more with Ring Ring, a composition that would mark the threshold between their provincial success and international stardom. Producer Michael B. Trato enveloped the track in his distinctive wall of sound production, a sonic signature that would become synonymous with their identity. Neil Sedaka and Phil Cody supplied English-language lyrics, transforming the composition into a cross-cultural hybrid. Though Ring Ring narrowly missed victory in the Eurovision competition, the song and its accompanying album achieved commercial traction across multiple European nations and in South Africa. That same year, Agnetha welcomed a daughter, Linda, and Inger Brunn temporarily substituted for her during a West German promotional tour. Stig Andersson determined that the group required a more economical designation. He christened them ABBA, each letter representing the first name of each member, a playful homage to a Swedish seafood canning enterprise. The company granted permission contingent upon the band conducting themselves with dignity and propriety. The instantly recognizable ABBA logo emerged serendipitously during a subsequent photo shoot when Benny inadvertently reversed his letter, inspiring the design team to incorporate this mirror image B as a permanent visual signature. By 1976, this distinctive branding had become inseparable from the group's identity. The 1974 Melodifestivalen provided ABBA's genuine inflection point. They selected Waterloo, an energetic composition inspired by the glam rock revolution emanating from the United Kingdom. On February 9, they secured the Swedish national selection, and precisely 2 months later, on April 6, 1974, they seized the Eurovision Song Contest crown, performing entirely in English. This victory functioned as an international passport. Waterloo ascended to number 1 across 9 nations and penetrated the American top 10, ultimately reaching number 6, an achievement that verified their cross-cultural appeal. Follow-up single, Honey Honey, achieved moderate success, though their British label inexplicably selected Ring Ring for re-release in the UK market, creating momentary uncertainty about whether ABBA constituted a genuinely durable phenomenon or merely a one-off Eurovision curiosity. Late 1974's European tour presented mixed results, with numerous venues failing to achieve capacity and necessitating cancellations. The tide shifted dramatically in early 1975. Scandinavian dates produced sold-out auditoriums everywhere the group performed. Subsequent singles, particularly SOS and Mamma Mia, demonstrated explosive commercial traction across Europe and Australia, with the latter dominating Australian radio via the iconic television program Countdown for 10 consecutive weeks at the summit. By 1976, ABBA had transformed into a household phenomenon across vast swathes of the globe, though penetrating the American album market remained frustratingly elusive. March 1976 delivered a watershed moment. They released Greatest Hits, their inaugural UK #1 album, featuring the revolutionary composition, Fernando. This single became perhaps their most universally recognized achievement, topping the charts in at least 13 nations and selling in excess of 10 million copies worldwide, a staggering validation of their universal appeal. Later that same year, they unleashed Arrival, an album that catapulted their success into previously uncharted territory. It contained multiple compositions of extraordinary quality: Money, 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 Knowing Me, Knowing You, and most significantly, Dancing Queen, which dominated the global charts and achieved primacy in the United States, a breakthrough that consecrated them as authentic international superstars rather than merely European phenomena. January 1977 inaugurated their inaugural major international tour, commencing in Norway and traversing the European continent before arriving in Australia. Australian audiences greeted them with unprecedented fervor, though logistical challenges, including torrential rainfall and even a bomb threat in Perth, tested their resilience. This Australian sojourn was immortalized in the documentary feature ABBA the Movie, released later that year in tandem with their self-titled album ABBA. April 1979 witnessed the release of Voulez-Vous, partially recorded in Miami's legendary Criteria Studios. It produced hits including Chiquitita, I Have a Dream, and Does Your Mother Know, which, while not uniformly achieving UK #1 status, dominated charts in Belgium and achieved substantial popularity internationally. That same year's Greatest Hits Volume 2 featured Gimme Gimme Gimme, A Man After Midnight, another composition that captured the era's zeitgeist. September 1979's commencement of the ABBA Tour in North America presented the group performing to consistently sold-out arenas, with London's Wembley Arena hosting 6 consecutive nights. Japan welcomed them in 1980 for 11 sold-out concerts, their final major international tour undertaking. Yet triumph exacted an extraordinary price. ABBA transcended mere musical partnership. They represented 2 married couples, Agnetha and Bjorn, Benny and Annie Frid, whose romantic entanglements had metamorphosed into the group's emotional foundation. Their courtship narratives had captivated audiences globally. Fans cherished the notion that these individuals who performed romantic ballads together subsequently returned to shared homes where genuine intimacy awaited. The fantasy proved more sustainable than reality. Agnetha encountered Bjorn in 1968 while he performed with the Hootenanny Singers. Their romantic connection deepened rapidly, culminating in marriage during July 1971, with Benny playing the organ at their ceremonial exchange of vows. They welcomed their daughter Linda in 1973 and son Peter 4 years later. Nevertheless, the relentless demands of international touring, constant media intrusion, and the suffocating pressure of maintaining perfection corroded their relationship fundamentally. By 1979, at the precise moment when their professional accomplishments reached their zenith, their personal partnership fractured irreparably. For Agnetha, the rupture inflicted profound emotional damage, necessitating extensive therapeutic intervention. Contemporaneous reports suggested that Bjorn had established a romantic connection with Lena Kalro virtually instantaneously following the separation. Bjorn subsequently composed The Winner Takes It All, which Agnetha performed with extraordinary poignancy, her voice conveying devastation through lyrics questioning whether a new love possessed her predecessor's tenderness. Agnetha later acknowledged the emotional authenticity embedded in her vocal performance, while both parties maintained a facade of amicable dissolution. Yet Agnetha's private reflection offered brutal honesty. Obviously, we all comprehend that genuinely happy divorces do not exist, especially when children constitute the equation. Benny and Annie Frid's trajectory followed a superficially similar but subtly distinct trajectory. Their romantic involvement commenced in 1969, with cohabitation beginning by 1971, though they postponed marriage until October 1978, when ABBA occupied the apex of global influence. Paradoxically, merely 2 years elapsed before their marriage dissolved. Benny publicly characterized their separation as mutually agreeable, claiming they maintained friendship. However, the underlying reality proved considerably more complicated. Benny had encountered Mona Norlet, a television producer, and married her in November 1981. When confronted with this development, Annie Frid explained their dissolution with considerable dignity, stating they had simply grown out of one another and that dissolution became inevitable. Like Agnetha and Bjorn before them, Benny and Annie Frid attempted continuing their professional collaboration despite the romantic rupture. Yet something fundamental had altered. The chemistry that had produced their greatest work seemed to have evaporated alongside their personal affection. By 1982, both marriages had disintegrated, and simultaneously, ABBA's creative wellspring appeared to have dried up entirely. Spring 1982 initiated tentative new songwriting sessions with discussions circulating regarding potential album projects and modest touring. By May and June, the creative process had become demonstrably arduous. The quartet completed merely 3 compositions: You Owe Me One, I Am the City, and Just Like That. Dissatisfied with the results, Benny and Bjorn determined that shelving the recordings and accepting an indefinite summer recess represented the wisest course of action. Unexpectedly, their strategy shifted. Rather than attempting a fresh album, they resolved to compile The Singles, The First 10 Years, a retrospective collection encompassing their most celebrated compositions alongside unreleased material, for Christmas 1982 release. October and December witnessed the publication of The Day Before You Came, with Cassandra as the accompanying side, followed by Under Attack, with You Owe Me as the reverse. The former achieved top 5 status across multiple European territories, though British audiences demonstrated indifference toward both singles, with neither achieving top 20 positioning. The Singles, The First 10 Years, however, ascended to number 1 in the UK and Belgium, achieving respectable commercial performance across Germany and the Netherlands. Under Attack represented ABBA's final official single release before their dissolution. I Am the City eventually appeared in 1993, while Just Like That, despite consistent fan petitions across decades, never received official release, though fragmentary portions were subsequently repurposed for the musical Chess. Their final promotional appearances occurred during November 1982, with performances on prestigious British television including Saturday Superstore and The Late Late Breakfast Show. West German television's Show Express hosted them the following week. November 19 witnessed their concluding Swedish television appearance on Neues Masinen. Then, on December 11, 1982, ABBA performed together for the ultimate time, broadcast live to the United Kingdom on The Late Late Breakfast Show with Noel Edmonds, transmitted via live telecommunications from a Stockholm television studio. This constituted the definitive termination of an era. Following ABBA's dissolution, Bjorn and Benny maintained extraordinary professional momentum. They composed Chess, a theatrical masterwork, later adapted for cinema. Mamma Mia subsequently transformed from theatrical concept into a stage sensation and eventual film adaptation, achieving unprecedented global reach. Their combined wealth accumulated into the hundreds of millions. Fortune and ongoing recognition remained perpetually within their grasp. Agnetha and Annie Frid's posthumous existence assumed radically alternative configurations. Agnetha battled a constellation of psychological challenges: debilitating stage fright, paralyzing aviophobia, fear of flying, and the psychological torment inherent in separation from her offspring during extended touring commitments. Her relative reticence in public settings and linguistic insecurity, her English proficiency lagging slightly behind her bandmates, contributed to a progressive social withdrawal. Following her separation from Bjorn, Agnetha engaged in multiple romantic entanglements, including relationships with both a psychiatrist, the same professional who had previously attempted marriage reconciliation, and a law enforcement detective employed to protect her children against kidnapping threats. She remarried in 1990 to surgeon Thomas Sonnenfeld, maintaining extraordinary confidentiality until their divorce materialized merely 3 years later. Catastrophe subsequently struck when her mother tragically took her own life, followed by her father's demise 12 months thereafter. Agnetha withdrew progressively from public existence, eventually embracing a life of profound seclusion in rural Sweden, a voluntary exile reminiscent of cinema legend Greta Garbo's famous declaration, "I wish to be alone." For extended periods, she neither performed nor even listened to her own recordings. Her 2004 album, My Coloring Book, represented a surprise emergence, only for her to retreat into obscurity once more. Annie Frid's narrative encompassed equally complex contours. Born in 1945 as a consequence of a wartime liaison between her Norwegian mother, Sinni, then 16 years old, and a Wehrmacht sergeant named Alfred, Annie Frid inhabited a borderland of European tragedy. Alfred, already matrimonially bound, provided Sinni sustenance during food scarcity, a sack of potatoes that transformed into romantic connection. Following his repatriation to Germany, he never encountered his daughter. Sinni, confronted with societal ostracization in her homeland, escaped to Sweden with her infant daughter and her own mother, Annie. Sinni succumbed to kidney failure at 21, leaving Annie to raise Annie Frid independently. Annie Frid matured believing her father had perished by drowning. A dramatic reunion occurred in 1977 subsequent to his niece recognizing her from a television interview. The meeting proved emotionally unsatisfactory, with Annie Frid reflecting, acquiring a father at 32 presents significant complications. Before encountering Benny, Annie Frid had already experienced matrimony and subsequent dissolution, bearing 2 children from that previous union. Following ABBA's dissolution, Annie Frid relocated successively to London and subsequently Switzerland, where she established her principal residence. In 1992, she married into Germanic aristocracy, acquiring the title Her Serene Highness, Princess Annie Frid of Rus. Yet misfortune pursued her relentlessly. Her 30-year-old daughter perished in an automobile accident in New York in 1998, followed the subsequent year by her husband Prince Heinrich succumbing to malignancy. Annie Frid discovered solace through deepened religious faith, ultimately locating renewed happiness in Zermatt, Switzerland, with Viscount Hamilton, heir to the W. H. Smith mercantile fortune. For decades following ABBA's dissolution, the prospect of their reunion represented popular music's most persistent fantasy. Extraordinary financial inducements materialized, including a reported $1 billion offer during the early 2000s for a concert sequence, which all 4 categorically rejected. They materialized together exclusively at extraordinarily rare occasions, theatrical premieres of Mamma Mia, cinematic unveilings, and similar ceremonial moments. Inexplicably, 2018 witnessed a fundamental shift in their collective consciousness. All 4 commenced discussing potential collaborative endeavors. What commenced as discussions regarding merely 2 supplementary compositions evolved into something far more substantial, Voyage, a complete album released in 2021. Bjorn reminisced about the inaugural studio session, describing his moment of gazing into Agnetha's and Annie Frid's eyes, encountering the identical warmth, fellowship, and profound bonds that had originally catalyzed their extraordinary partnership. Simultaneously, they announced an audacious technological innovation, a high-fidelity concert experience utilizing sophisticated digital avatars representing their 1970s incarnations performing in an immersive environment. ABBA Voyage officially premiered in May 2022 within a custom-designed venue positioned in Stratford's Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in London, the same location that had hosted the 2012 Summer Olympic Games. This represented fundamentally something entirely distinct from conventional concert performances. Rather than the members themselves executing their compositions, audiences witnessed remarkably sophisticated digital avatars, appearing precisely as they manifested during the apex of their popularity in the 1970s, performing their most celebrated compositions. The production demonstrated extraordinary technical sophistication, generating an authentic sensation that ABBA existed physically within the venue. The setlist encompassed all their most iconic achievements, Dancing Queen, Waterloo, and Mamma Mia, among numerous others. The financial and cultural impact has demonstrated extraordinary robustness. According to contemporary economic assessments, ABBA Voyage has injected approximately £322 million into the British economy, with in excess of 1 million tickets distributed at prices ascending to £181.50. Beyond mere commercial metrics, the phenomenon has sustained ABBA's musical legacy for successive generations while simultaneously delivering nostalgic gratification to long-standing enthusiasts. In recognition of the production's 3rd anniversary commencing May 27, 2025, the production team supplemented the setlist with previously unperformed compositions, incentivizing recurrent patronage among returning spectators. The 3rd anniversary celebration unveiled an extraordinarily poignant surprise: Benny Andersson, now 78 years of age, and Annie Frid Lyngstad, 79, former spouses whose marriage had concluded over 4 decades previously, appeared unannounced within the venue's balcony seating, a configuration that had become extraordinarily uncommon since their romantic dissolution. Benny, fashionably attired in a printed blazer, and Annie Frid, radiating elegance in an ivory ensemble, stood adjacent as tumultuous applause erupted throughout the arena. Annie Frid addressed the assemblage first, her expression radiating genuine warmth. "I harbor profound affection for all of you," she declared. "I extend my gratitude for your steadfast devotion across the years. Contemplating that nearly 50 years have transpired remains extraordinary." She punctuated her remarks with characteristic levity. "I celebrate my 80th birthday this year," triggering escalated enthusiastic response from the audience. Her words functioned as a temporal bridge, acknowledging the remarkable distance traversed from ABBA's genesis until this precise juncture. When Benny subsequently assumed the microphone, rather than offering sentimentality, he elected to deliver levity, commencing with the classic joke commencement, "Two gentlemen enter an establishment." The audience erupted into laughter as Annifrid's visage transformed with genuine delight at his humor. For observers, this represented considerably more than mere comedic relief. It constituted a powerful reminder of their uncomplicated interpersonal ease and their shared history. Their romantic involvement had commenced in 1969, with cohabitation materializing shortly thereafter and matrimonial formalization occurring in 1978 at the height of their collective prominence. Yet sustaining intimate partnership while participating in one of popular music's most demanding endeavors proved impossibly difficult. By 1980, their marriage had fragmented, finalized throughout 1981. At that historical moment, Benny characterized their separation publicly as a mutual transition undertaken for the sake of the music, while Annifrid articulated it with characteristic candor: "We fundamentally transformed into different individuals." Following profound deliberation and considerable emotional turbulence, there existed no pathway toward reconciliation. "Our separation transformed from preference into absolute imperative." Their balcony appearance and Benny's deliberately light-hearted contribution functioned as a quiet but unmistakable revelation regarding the profound esteem and lingering affection persisting between these former partners. Their capacity to stand adjacent, exchange warm glances, and share genuine amusement suggested a human capability to transcend romantic dissolution while preserving the foundational elements that had initially drawn them together. Concurrent with ABBA Voyage achieving its impressive London residency, Benny Andersson and Bjorn Ulvaeus maintained their creative momentum across the Atlantic. Throughout 2025, the theatrical versions of their two monumental compositions, Mamma Mia and Chess, were simultaneously performing on Broadway. Mamma Mia had premiered in London during 1999, subsequently arriving on Broadway in 2001, where its unprecedented trajectory had rendered it one of the theatrical canon's most celebrated achievements. The production had been witnessed by over 70 million spectators across 50 international productions in 16 distinct languages. Its Broadway engagement had endured 14 years, encompassing 5,773 performances and accumulating box office receipts surpassing $7 billion, positioning it among Broadway's historical 9 longest-running theatrical achievements. Its 2025 residency at the Winter Garden Theatre encompassed performances from August 2 through February 1, 2026. Chess, collaboratively created during the 1980s, joined its theatrical partner simultaneously on Broadway's stages. This temporal coincidence of both productions underscored the durability and creative vitality of Benny and Bjorn's artistic partnership, a collaborative bond that had flourished notwithstanding ABBA's dissolution, personal tribulations, and romantic complications, persisting in connecting their compositions across generations of listeners worldwide.